Headphone, sound of a silent forest at night, soft wind blowing. In a quiet village in Kebumen, Central Java, lived a teenager named Jono. He came from a respected family, with a long and honored lineage. But it wasn't just about social status. His family held a secret, an ancient ritual, performed every Monday Pahing night, a sacred Javanese day. The ritual seemed simple: slaughter a rooster, then hold a small Thanksgiving ceremony at home. But don't be fooled. It was said that if the ritual wasn't done, an unseen being would come to claim what was rightfully his. For years, the ritual went smoothly. But time brought hardship. Jono's family fell into financial ruin. And on one Monday Pahing night, the ritual was skipped. That night, without any sense of dread, Jono played with his two friends, Suging and Kerio. They laughed freely, losing track of time until just before dusk. But something felt off. Headphone, low growl, creaking of bamboo. As Jono entered the house to grab his sarong, Suging and Kerio waited outside. Suddenly, the air turned heavy. The wind stopped. Then, shrak! A low growl echoed from behind the trees. Suging whispered, "Did you hear that?" Kerio nodded. It sounded like a tiger. They ran into the house. Inside, they found Jono and his mother sitting pale in the corner. Jono's mother gestured urgently, "Shut the door." And just as the door slammed shut, the bamboo wall began to bulge inward, as if a massive creature was pressing against it from the outside. Headphone, heavy breathing, then the sound of eyes snapping open. Blup. They peeked through a small crack. Two glowing red eyes stared back at them. Huge, piercing, inhuman. This wasn't a dream. It was a tiger demon, the spirit that came to collect the forgotten ritual. Headphone, sound of night birds, distant rooster crowing. After that terrifying incident, Jono's family realized their mistake. The Monday Pahing ritual had to be continued, no matter what. For the next few months, they obeyed. And sure enough, the nights became peaceful again. But life wasn't easy. Financial hardship returned, this time even worse. They couldn't afford a rooster. And once again, the ritual was skipped. But something had changed. Suging, one of Jono's friends, became curious. "I want to see it again, that demon," he whispered. Kerio recoiled. "Are you crazy?" But Suging insisted. And Jono, despite his fear, gave in. That night, the three of them gathered once again at Jono's house, on another Monday Pahing night. They skipped the Maghrib prayer. They didn't go to the mosque. They just waited, hoping to witness the creature again. They sat in silence. Suging crouched behind the door. Jono and Kerio hid in the living room. Headphone, heavy footsteps on the ground, then a deep growl. The sound of massive footsteps echoed from a distance. Closer and closer until the house shook violently. Shrak! A huge dent formed on the bamboo wall. And then those red eyes appeared again. But this time, the tiger demon didn't stay still. It circled the house, growling with rage. Then suddenly it turned, locking eyes with Suging. That gaze pierced right through his soul. Suging held his breath. He didn't move. He didn't blink. Headphone called to prayer for Maghrib echoes in the distance. And only after the adhan ended, the creature slowly vanished into the mist. The three young men sat in silence, shaken to the core, because now they understood. This ritual was no longer a tradition. It was a price to be paid for the safety of their lives. Headphone, sound of chickens clucking wildly, a distant thud, then silence. Time passed. Jono grew older. He married a village girl named Lestari. Their life was simple, but happy until another crisis struck. The rooster once reserved for the Monday Pahing ritual was now their last hope for survival. And that night, the ritual was skipped again. Jono couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in bed uneasy. Outside, his chickens suddenly screeched in panic, loud and unnatural. Jono peeked through the back window, and what he saw froze the blood in his veins. Headphone, heavy footsteps, and deep breathing of a large creature. A massive black figure, tall and covered in rough fur, was clutching his chickens. Its eyes blazed red, and the air was thick with a foul, metallic stench. Genderuwo, Jono whispered, a legendary demon of Java. Summoning his courage, Jono stepped outside. "Hey, "Let go of my chickens," he shouted. The creature slowly turned its head, growling low. Then, casually, it tossed one chick to the ground, as if saying, "This is compensation. The rest are mine." Then it leapt into the tree, vanishing into the shadows. Headphone, sound of rustling leaves, chickens whimpering. The next morning, the village was in shock. 3 of Jono's chickens were gone, with only scattered feathers left behind. But no one dared question it, because they all knew. When the ritual is forgotten, the unseen will take what they believe is owed. After enduring repeated terrors, Jono made a firm decision. He wanted to pass down the Monday Pahing ritual to his children and grandchildren. But that good intention was not received the way he had hoped. His wife, Lestari, was furious. "Do you want our children to live haunted by that ritual for the rest of their lives?" Jono tried to explain. "This isn't about belief, it's about protection." But Lestari still refused. She wanted their family to stop living in fear. In the end, Jono gave up. He chose a different path. From that moment on, every Monday Pahing night, he and his wife replaced the ritual with prayers and midnight worship. No chickens were slaughtered, no offerings were made. The nights passed peacefully. No shapeshifters, no genderuo, no eerie sounds of walls bending. Headphone, soft prayers echo in the background, a peaceful atmosphere. Jono began to believe maybe those supernatural beings had finally stopped disturbing them. Or perhaps they were only waiting for the right time to return. Headphone, sound of dripping faucet. The house is eerily silent. One night, Jono woke up feeling thirsty. He went down to the kitchen to get some water. As he opened the kitchen door, he saw his son-in-law, Omri, standing still, his back turned to him. "Omri, what are you doing here in the middle of the night?" Jono asked softly, but Omri didn't respond. He didn't move at all. Slowly, Jono stepped closer, and in that moment, Omri turned around. But it wasn't Omri's face he saw. Headphone, loud sound effect, sudden shock. Standing there was a Pokong with a disfigured face, one eye dangling, mouth wide open, dripping thick black fluid. Jono froze. He wanted to scream, but couldn't. He wanted to run, but his body felt nailed to the floor. All he could do was recite verses in his heart. The Pokong stared deep into him, then slowly faded, disappearing into the air. Lestari came rushing in. "What's wrong, Mas?" Jono could only point toward the kitchen with a trembling hand. He was right there. Headphone, sound of the night wind, torches crackling, and unsteady footsteps echoing. Monday Pahing night came again, but this time it was different. As Jono and Lestari sat quietly on their front porch, they noticed a crowd, dozens of people, walking past the house, each holding a burning torch. At first, they thought it was a late-night procession for a celebration, but as they looked closer, their feet weren't touching the ground. The figures were dressed in old traditional clothes, their faces pale. Some had eyes beneath their chins. Some had mouths on their temples. All of them moved in silence. Lestari clung to her husband. "Mas, they're not human." Headphones, strange sounds, echoes from a world beyond. The eerie parade continued, heading toward the river. And then suddenly they vanished. No sound, no light, nothing. Jono was certain. It was a procession of spirits, and they were saying their final goodbye. From that night on, the house was quiet. No more tiger roars. No more genderuo. No more Pokong. Everything truly disappeared. Perhaps the Monday Pahing ritual had finally been closed by time. Or perhaps they're only asleep, waiting for new blood to forget the old stories. Headphones, soft sound of night wind and faint creaking wood, the atmosphere of an old house. Years passed. Jono had grown old. His hair turned white, his steps slow and unsteady. But there was one thing he still kept close, a small book wrapped in mori cloth, always stored inside the wooden cabinet inherited from his grandfather. It was the ancestral book of the Monday Pahing ritual. Not a book of spells, but merely an old journal, filled with dates, types of chickens used, and strange events that occurred alongside the rituals. Yet behind those simple entries, the book held a long, silent history between his family and beings from another realm. One night, his grandson, Rafi, a mischievous, curious teenager, snuck into Jono's room. He found the book and began to read it. Headphone, sound of old paper turning slowly. Wind rustling through a window. He chuckled. My grandpa still believes in this stuff. Without permission, he took the book to school and showed it to his friends. They say this thing calls a shapeshifter tiger, he bragged. His friends laughed with him, but one of them, Danny, noticed a folded page and, half-jokingly, began to read aloud. I'll just say it. Maybe the tiger will come tonight. Wuluin yuan rao, kanjeng lelambut, lebatonon garsain kula. Headphone, faint echoing sound, then sudden silence. Everyone laughed. Then they went home like usual. But that night, at Danny's house, strange noises echoed from the tin roof. A deep rumble, claws scratching, then a long, eerie tiger's howl. Shrek! A gaping hole was torn through the roof, as if clawed open from the outside. Danny was found by his mother in convulsions, his eyes staring blankly into space. And the next morning, the book was mysteriously back inside Jono's cabinet, as if it had never left. Ask ChatGPT. Headphone, sound of light rain at night. Empty street, a motorcycle passing slowly. Growing suspicious, Rafi asked his grandfather, Bah, what's the point of that ritual really? Can it actually summon spirits? Jono answered briefly, It's not to summon them, but to keep them away. But Rafi's curiosity only grew stronger. He began observing every Monday Pahing night, and sure enough, something strange always happened. One evening, while riding his motorbike home from a small food stall near the rice fields, Rafi saw an old man standing by the roadside. Still, unmoving, his face hidden beneath a wide bamboo hat. Rafi slowed down, intending to greet him, but when the old man turned around, headphone, loud shock sound effect, followed by silence. His face had no eyes, only smooth skin, and two small horns growing from his forehead. Rafi screamed, lost control of the bike, and nearly fell. When he turned back to look, the man was gone. Once he got home, he rushed straight into his room, shivering. But through the window, he saw the bamboo hat, hanging on their front fence. Headphone, sound of a clock ticking slowly, then a sudden loud thud. Jono was now nearly 80 years old, his body frail, his steps reliant on a cane. But there was one thing he never missed, Monday Pahing night. Though no chickens were sacrificed anymore, he still secluded himself in a small chamber of the house, praying, chanting, burning incense, not to summon, but to honor an ancient pact made by his ancestors. But that night felt different. The sky was overcast. The wind blew stronger than usual. Even the animals in the village fell silent, as if they sensed something was coming. Headphone, clock ticking stops, followed by a deep rumble, like the footsteps of a giant. Jono sat cross-legged, cold sweat dripping down his face. Outside, heavy footsteps approached closer, then stopped right in front of his door. It's time, Jono whispered, and without a knock, the door creaked open on its own. A tall figure entered, humanoid, but covered in dark fur, its face obscured by a black mist. The creature bowed, as if paying respect. Jono simply said, I'm ready. There was no scream, no cry. The next morning, Lestari found Jono sitting cross-legged, a peaceful smile on his face, but lifeless. In the palm of his hand was a single tiger's hair. Headphone, sound of a shovel striking soil, wind softly blowing, but with a heavy, pressing feel. Jono's burial took place that very afternoon. The entire village came to pay their respects, and Rafi stood at the very front. He gazed at his grandfather's body wrapped in white cloth, tears slowly falling down his cheeks. But as the grave was dug, something felt off. The soil was strangely hard, like stone, then suddenly loose, like wet sand. And when the body was lowered into the ground, the earth refused to settle. Each time they tried to cover Jono's body with soil, the ground sank in again, as if it were being swallowed from within. People began to panic. Unsettling sounds rose from beneath the grave, muttering, moaning, or the growl of a beast. A village ustad stepped forward and began to recite verses loudly. At that moment, a sudden gust of wind swept across the cemetery, and the earth sealed itself shut, neatly, as if the grave had never been opened. But it didn't end there. Headphone, sound of a wooden door creaking open slowly at night. That night, Jono's house was no longer quiet. Lights flickered on by themselves. Footsteps echoed on the floor. And through the window glass, Rafi and his mother often saw a shadow standing still. Jono, silently watching them. He hadn't truly left. Headphone, sound of water dripping from the roof. Silent night, faint whispering. Since Jono's death, the small family he left behind, Lestari and her son Rafi, tried to continue life as usual. But their house was never truly quiet again. Every Monday Pahing night, sounds came from the attic, like footsteps, as if something were pacing back and forth above the ceiling. Lestari tried to ignore it, but Rafi knew it wasn't rats. It wasn't a cat. One night, he even climbed into the attic and found nothing. But as he came back down, he noticed large, dusty footprints, leading toward Jono's old bedroom door, a room that had been locked for years. Rafi grew increasingly restless. Strange dreams began to haunt him. In those dreams, his grandfather appeared, wearing a tattered white robe, standing in the middle of a fog-covered rice field. The ritual isn't a curse, it's a guardian. If you stop it completely, your family's blood will call them back. Rafi woke up in a cold sweat, but he knew it wasn't just a dream. Headphone, sound of pages flipping quickly, hurried breathing. He searched for Jono's ritual book, but it was gone. Not in the cabinet, not under the bed. 2 days later, the book was found, under his mother's pillow. Its last page left open, with fresh handwriting. Next ritual, Monday Pahing, month of Suro, offering one young life. Rafi trembled, because the name written on that page was his. Headphone, soft sound of Javanese gamelan, slowly shifting into off-key chimes. Monday Pahing in the month of Suro had arrived. The sky was dark and heavy. A cold wind blew fiercely from the north. Lestari sat reading Surah Yasin, sobbing quietly. Rafi remained silent in the corner of the house, clutching his grandfather's heirloom carries. That night, exactly at 1 a.m., the lights in the house went out. Silence. No sound, except for the pounding of their hearts echoing in their chests. Then the creaking of bamboo at the back of the house, like claws scratching against the walls. Bang! The back door burst open. A tall, dark figure stood in the doorway. Its glowing red eyes pierced the darkness. Its breath growled like a beast. But what made Rafi freeze was the face of the creature. It looked exactly like him. Half human, half demon. The creature stepped forward. Lestari screamed, her body trembling. But Rafi moved closer, locked eyes with the creature, and then drove the carries into the ground between them. Headphone, a supernatural blast shakes the room. A strong wind sweeps through. The creature stopped. Its gaze softened. It looked up to the sky and let out a mournful cry, like a tiger weeping. Then slowly, its body faded into a golden light. After that night, there were no more sounds from the attic. No more shadows. No more terrifying Monday Pahing nights. But Rafi knew. The curse wasn't gone. It was only put to sleep. And one day, if the next generation forgets this story, they will return to demand the ritual or take blood.